Alright guys, hope you're all doing well, hope you're all keeping safe. About a week ago I made a video talking about rainbow rolls in TU11 following the collection of some data that I got from my summit run. Now in that video I said I'd do some more testing, this time in all activities rather than just the summit. Collect more data and then come back to you with the results. Well, today I wanted to do that, as well as talk about loot quality. The bottom line is rainbow rolls are more prevalent than my first collection process, but still uncommon. If you enjoyed this one, the best way to support me is watch the video until the end. You can like, comment, subscribe as well, which I appreciate a lot. And with that said, let's begin. So I've now reached season level 100 and I actually got this awesome mask that you get from the rewards track. It's by far my favourite mask in the game up until this point, which is great actually. You know, I wish I could wear a hoodie over it if I'm being honest, but nonetheless, I think this mask is certainly worth the grind. I just hope the Air Powered event coming up can offer some awesome vanity items worth grinding for as well, because I've not really been interested in the last couple, if I'm being honest. The images we have seen of the new apparel does look awesome, mine, so you know, fingers crossed for that. Now on my grind to level 100, I did plenty of different activities. Control points probably doing the most, that's probably what I spent most of my time doing, but I did the manhunt missions in general, you know, world activities like Warhound convoys and lots more, which meant that instead of just getting loot drops from one source, as per my first video on rainbow rolls, that being the summit, I got loot drops from various different sources. Now, I'm sure that the chance of a rainbow roll dropping is the same amongst every activity within the game, but I have to say, I did have quite a few more kind of rainbow rolls from the open world activities and missions compared to the summit drops. Now, in my last video, I recorded only one, you know, just one rainbow roll out of 46 gear drops within the summit run I did, day 1 and day 2. So it had just over a 2% drop chance, which, you know, I was pretty happy with, to be honest, because the vast majority of builds, you know, the overwhelming amount do not use rainbow rolls. You know, sure, you're going to get some niche builds that do, but if you're wanting to cater to the 98% of the builds in the game, having a 2% drop chance on rainbow rolls seemed okay with me, as I'm sure it did for 98% of you guys. Now in that video, I also calculated a 76% chance of having the first attribute match the core attribute, and over a 24% chance of getting a full colour drop as well. So all in all, I think this data looked really healthy and optimistic about the changes made with TU11, and I was really happy for once with the gear drops in terms of the colour distribution from the first set of data that I got from my summit run. Now since then I've had a lot more time to collect a lot more data, not the 300 that I actually wanted to collect just because that would take way longer than I'd like, but way more than just my first collection. The results are actually very different from my first video, so I wanted to go over them but also discuss the loot quality as well. So on screen you're going to see various drops that I got, and I'm just going to play them in kind of like a roll so you can just kind of see everything. I did not record all of them as an image, but there's about, I think in total there's 63 images that I took. Now, I did do a tally on all my drops using the most sophisticated method I could think of, obviously, paper, and here you see me holding that tally, just like my first video, so I want to get down to the results. Now, in total, I collected 122 gear drops. This would have been way higher had I, say, farmed a mission with gear, but instead I did farm my favourite control point in New York, which had weapons, so I did not get I did get a lot of weapons actually, as opposed to getting kind of targeted gear, which means that the amount of drops I got was a lot lower than I'd like. So out of 122 gear drops for this sample, of those 122 gear drops, I got 79 gear drops where the first attribute matched the core, meaning that I had a 64.75% drop chance. So basically, 65% of the time, the first attribute matched the core from those 122 gear drops that I got. Now this is exactly what I expected, to be honest. In my first video I said that I expected this figure to sit between 60 and 70%. Now if you take into account my first set of data, then you're looking at a 70% chance approximately for this to happen, and I'm pretty confident that that's actually the mark set here, which again, you know, I'm totally okay with that. 70% of the time, you know, the first attribute matching the core, to me that's pretty good. You know, it's weighted not just a little bit, but quite a lot more towards the first attribute, and that's really good as well. And that matches what the data that was collected towards the end of the PTS as well. Now, moving on to the full colour match, out of the 22 gear drops I had, 16 drops were a full colour match, meaning this, for me, was a 13.1% chance. That's quite a bit lower than my initial testing from the Summit gear, actually, which, you know, it was a little bit disappointing, to be honest, but like I've said before, they can't completely eradicate RNG from the game, and there does have to be some grind to it. So in many aspects, I don't actually mind that this stat only came in at 13%, and I'd be happy for it to stay there. This is, of course, personal preference, so I'd be interested to know what you guys think of this stat in the comments down below. Alright, so moving on to the all-important rainbow rolls then. Out of the 122 gear drops I received, 17 rainbow rolls, which means this had a 13.93% drop chance, a far cry from the 2% that I actually experienced from the Summit playthrough. Now this is obviously a huge difference. It does actually make me question if the Summit is tuned separately, to be honest. It was most likely just RNG because people did respond to my last video saying they got way more rainbow rolls than I did, but it might be worth testing the Summit drops against the other activities in the game just to see if there is you know, a huge disparity like there is based on this data. Now, based on the data I've collected, it would appear the Summit has, you know, way less rainbow rolls and way more full color rolls as well. So at nearly 14% then for rainbow roll, guys, what do you think of that? Is that too much? Is that, you know, is that not enough? Let me know down below. Like I said earlier, I was happy with this figure being at 2%. What I will say is I was playing and I was recording this data, and at no point did I feel like rainbow rolls were a problem like before. I wasn't sat there going, wow, and you know, I'm just getting too many. Actually, it felt pretty nice, actually, and the same goes for the full color rolls as well. Actually, it actually felt fine to me. So I'm thinking at this junction, the rainbow loot issue appears to be in a good place. Again, this is personal opinion. It's also based on RNG, so I am interested to hear your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. It would be good if we could kind of tick this one off the topic list so the devs could focus on something else. And I guess that comes to my next talking point, and that's loot quality. So as I was recording all the data for the rainbow rolls, I didn't really pay attention to the loot quality. Just because it wasn't really something that I was interested in. It was something I was going to think about in the future, but what I decided to do here is just go back and take a look at some of the images of the loot that I got, you know, the 63 images that I did record. Now here I wanted to see the rolls, their percentages, the amount of full max rolls that I got, and the amount of items that had at least one max roll. Now it's worth noting before I go over these that all these drops came on heroic activities. So here's the data on the rolls. Now, out of the 63 drops that I got, those that had more than one max roll was 10, meaning that 15.87% of the time I had at least one attribute max rolled. And actually, I reviewed them again, and out of the 63 drops, I had 3 drops with 2 max rolls. So that was a 3.17% chance. In terms of full max rolls, so everything maxed out, I only got 1 actually out of 63 drops, meaning that this had a 1.58% chance at the time. Now this is no surprise to me, to be honest, for max rolls. They are quite rare for me. I say for me because I've seen other people get max rolls way more often than I do, but I don't actually mind, to be honest, because I do play on heroic. Now with that said, I don't think the difficulty actually affects the percentage of max rolls that drop in the world, and they only affect the minimum percentage rolls on gear as an overall kind of average. Now, I've reached out to Nikki on Twitter just to confirm this, and if I get a response before I upload this video, I will include it here. So Nikki did respond, actually. I asked him, does difficulty in the Division 2 determine how often a gear drops with full max rolls, or does it just affect the minimum overall roll? Thanks. To which Nikki responded saying both. It's minimum overall power as a hard cutoff, and then higher chances for better overall power, including maximum power, which is full max rolls. These are pretty rare though, but an increase in single and double god rolls should be more noticeable. So there you go. Difficulty does affect the amount of max rolled items or attributes you get on pieces. That's important to note then, because as I said before, this data was collected from heroic sources only. And I guess with this in mind then, I can't imagine what the percentage would be for anything lower than heroic if you're trying to get a max rolled item. That must be pretty brutal. So going back to what I was saying, personally I don't mind the max roll percentage being very low because they're the best in the game. You know, they are max rolls, so they should be difficult to come by. Of course, the chance of getting max rolls on the attributes that you want with the right gear set, that's incredibly low. But again, I don't mind this, actually, because there has to be RNG in the game, and there's so much stuff in this game which has removed that RNG that I don't mind it being where the loot is. Now, what I did as well is look at the actual loot quality. So I took all 63 images that I had and basically wrote out the percentages of each attribute for each piece of gear, added them together so they were out of 300, this being 100% for each attribute, and then divided by 3 to give you a mean attribute percentage for each piece of gear. There was at least one restriction for any gear drop in skill tiers. I just didn't add these, although I could have on reflection, as they made changes to skill tiers with T11 where they were not included in the roll percentage any longer. So this is probably more out of like 45 pieces of gear, 50 pieces of gear rather than 63. Anyway, with that in mind, what were the results? Well, I'm not going to go over all the results here because we'd be here forever. I'm going to show you a few examples. But the bottom line is only a couple of my drops actually were below 70%. And most of them, the vast majority of them, were about 80% plus, with 1 in 10 of them being above 90%, which was really nice. Now, the first one here is this Badger Tough backpack. The armor attribute is rolled at 71.8%. It's 122k out of 170k. Hazard protection is easy at 92%. And then skill haste being 10.2% out of 12% means it rolls at 85%. Now, these three combined give you a total score of 248.8 out of 300, meaning this Badger Tough backpack rolled at 82.9%. So that's pretty good. Here's another example, which is an Overlord chest piece. The core attribute is rolling at 65.3% with only 9.8 out of 15. Headshot damage rolling at 93%. And then 17.2% repair skills out of 20 is 86%. These three combined gives you a score of 244.3, which gives you an overall roll percentage of 81.4%. These are just two of many pieces that rolled kind of around these figures. The lowest roll I actually got was this percussive maintenance named backpack, which had 5.2% weapon damage, 9.3% crit damage, and 17,038 health. This gave a score of 202.1 out of 300, meaning it had a mean average of 67.4% roll quality. And that was the lowest one that I got. Now, like I said, this was very uncommon, very much like rolls above 90%. I'm going to presume that the minimum percent that you can get on heroic is 95% with that in mind. Most of the rolls I got were between 75 and 85% in terms of roll quality, which for heroic content feels about right, to be honest. There needs to be some room for legendary, of course. Now, when I did play legendary on the summit, I'd say most of my rolls were between 85 and 95%. So that makes sense. To summarise, guys, rainbow rolls appear to be dropping about 10% of the time in T11, with the majority of drops having the first attribute matching the core, by my calculations, 65% of the time, which, you know, this is great news. On top of this, loot quality on heroic appears to be dropping between 75 to 85% most of the time. On the rare occasion, it's below 70% and above 90%. Max rolls across all attributes are still very rare at about 1.5% as well. So all in all, I'm pretty pleased with where the loot has landed with TU11, and I really think the devs can step away from this topic for now and focus their energy elsewhere, which again is really, really nice to hopefully not talk about loot too much more. Of course, these are my drops and it's my RNG, so it might be different for you because RNG can never really be accounted for. Hope you've enjoyed this one, guys, and thanks for watching. If you did stick around to hear me say this, I really do appreciate it. And with that said, have a good weekend, and I will see you next week. Epic out.